A flurry of activity as the San Francisco 49ers get ready for a joint practice and a preseason game with the Denver Broncos, and we already have a winner declared for one of the camp competitions on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers. Thanks for sticking with us through the offseason. We got some real live football happening this week. And if you're new to the program, welcome. We'll break down your San Francisco 49ers every day, all season long. Subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And we got to start with, tons of transactions, man. And when there's injuries stacking up and the 49ers trying to get ready to make sure they're healthy enough to go have these joint practices. So I wonder if some of these names might come back at some point. So I'll put that out there first. But tons of transactions on this Monday, the week of the first preseason game. So I'm going to just run through the transactions really quick here first, and then we'll get into some of them because some of them are maybe a little bit bigger than others. So the 49ers have added defensive lineman Bradley Anae, defensive lineman Bruce Hector, safety Jalen Mahoney, who has already been around the San Francisco 49ers, cornerback Fabian Moreau, former UCLA corner, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Drafted by the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and offensive lineman Isaiah Prince, all those one-year contracts. And in order to make room for all of those players on the roster, the San Francisco 49ers waived some shocking names, to be honest with you, in some cases. Cornerback Trey Avery, wide receiver, undrafted rookie Isaiah Neyor, second-year quarterback, undrafted rookie last year, Tanner Mordecai, undrafted rookie from last year, tight end Mason Pline, the former Hooper, and have not waived but released kicker Greg Joseph, which means, Croc, we've got to start with the kicking competition, which we didn't even get to see into the preseason now because of the numbers game. It is Jake Moody's job by default, and the competition is basically over. One guy was a third-round pick, the other guy wasn't, and there's no longer a competition because they need bodies elsewhere. Croc, what are your thoughts there with Jake Moody winning that kicking competition really before it ever got off the ground in these games?
Man, I was shocked to see the kicker cut because I thought it was a true competition. And like you said, did the kicker win? Did Jake Moody win by default? And when Kyle Shanahan explained it, I watched the press conference. It sounded like it was just kind of a numbers game, and you had some injuries in certain spots. Moody has kicked well. So, all right, let's cut Joseph and let's pick up guys that can help us in other places. I would have liked to see them keep the pressure on Moody a little bit, and I like Moody. I think Moody has a lot of ability. Maybe they looked at the shortened stroke that he's been kicking with, and they said, you know what, that's good enough for us. We're comfortable with that, and he's done a good job. Throughout camp, he has missed up until the last one I checked, I think it was like yesterday. He had one more miss than Joseph. So it was tight, and maybe Joseph didn't make it apparent enough that he was the guy. It was just a little too close. Maybe if he had made every kick, he'd still be around. Or maybe it was just Moody's to begin with. And I did see a message on social media where someone said, what does Jake Moody have on Kyle Shanahan? Why is he doing it? Like, why is he cutting Greg Joseph?
He's got draft capital. Sunk cost is definitely what, when you go out to dinner and you don't feel like finishing your dinner, but you're not just going to leave it on the plate. You're going to get a doggy bag and you're going to take it home, whether you eat it, you feed it to one of your kids, you feed it to your dog. You're not going to let that go to waste. And I think that's what the 49ers are trying to get every bit of their third round pick price that they paid for Jake Moody. And let's be honest, we already knew going in that a tie was going to go to Jake Moody in this competition. And maybe it was even a sham of a competition in a lot of ways. And I do have the quote from Kyle Shanahan here mentioning how they needed, it was just kind of a luxury to have two kickers with all these other guys that they have that are injured and not able to practice right now and needing to sign some bodies for this week. And he did say, quote, he's not here, but whether you have one kicker in the building or two, kickers always know they're competing with whoever's out there. So I don't see it much different. So if Moody goes out and what's the bed and starts missing a bunch of kicks in the preseason game, the 49ers know Greg Joseph's phone number unless someone else snatches him up first. So it's possible that if Moody falters, he's really competing with himself. And if he doesn't look the part, then there might still be one kicker in camp and it's somebody else instead of Jake Moody if he's not up to it. So it's not quite over, but at this point, Moody would have to be really bad.
There's only 32 starting kickers around the league, or just kickers in general on teams. So you'd like to believe that maybe a guy like Joseph would still be available. And I think the 49ers, at the very least, saw enough to say, you know what, we like the way he kicks. He kicks well enough. If something happens, we could bring him back. But you always have the risk or run the risk of missing out on the opportunity, a guy like that. I remember the 49ers signed Sly, big leg guy. And he was a guy that was just on the street. He missed like one or two field goals for the 49ers, filling in for an injured, I believe it was Robbie Gould at that time. But man, there were some really good kicks. There were some clutch kicks, and there's the big leg kicks. Like, I thought he kicked very well. Well, when the 49ers kicker was healthy, of course, they let Sly go. Sly has been the starter. I want to say he's on like Washington Commanders now. So he ended up picking up a job. So Joseph is just a guy that's out there. He kicked well for the 49ers, and you hope that he'll continue to be available and that you're not rushing to the decision. I get what he's saying. There's a lot of, they're always competing. Of course, we know that. But man, the guy that was in your building and you liked and you let him go, I'm curious to see how this plays out for Jake Moody.
In a very Eric Crocker-like manner, we've seen some other players get released and waived because you need numbers at a different position. And guys we really want to see out there perform and compete, we might not get that opportunity to see because there's so many players out. I want to get into some specific names here in a second about who was brought in and who was waived, Croc, but really quick. So
real quick, can you talk about the Eric Crocker manner? I mean, this is just how cutthroat it is. Yeah. We're getting ready to go into this preseason game. And it was Joe McKnight. You guys all remember RIP Joe McKnight had a concussion. He got a concussion. Brian Winters, who played for a while, he was a center. He was like a 4th round pick. He had a high ankle sprain. And Chris Ivory, he had some kind of ankle injury. He was a running back. They just said, oh, let's just cut Eric Crocker and bring in these other guys to fill these positions so we can go into this game with enough guys. And that's it. And then you're just gone. Now they bring you back and practice squad and all those type of things. But, I mean, that's just how it happens. So for some guys that you're about to name right now, hopefully they get, more opportunities. But it just sucks that sometimes it's not even something that you're just doing wrong. It's just a numbers game because of all these other spots that we have to fill. Absolutely.
So guys getting Crockered out here just because they need numbers at another spot. That's there. Well, you want to see some of these guys too. And that's kind of the thing is you don't get that opportunity to see guys compete. And maybe that next preseason game is the breakout game where like, wow, we can't cut this guy because look what he did here. And instead he might do that for another team, which brings me to wide receiver Isaiah Neyor, 6'4", 220 pounds. He made one of the best highlight catches of camp so far. We haven't had a chance to see him in either the joint practice or against any other teams in these preseason games yet. And now he has been waived for numbers at another position. So I want to talk a little bit more about Isaiah Neyor, specifically some of the other players who are banged up, not practicing for the 49ers, which is why they need to add players and need to add numbers to get ready for these joint practices with I believe it's joint practice. I think it's only one this year. Kyle Shanahan was asked about why, last year, are they healthy enough to even do the joint practices? Last year, remember they canceled the ones against the Saints. It was a couple of practices scheduled then. I believe this is only one joint practice scheduled with the Denver Broncos. So they're able, numbers wise, to get through that one practice. Who will be there, who will not, and the guys that are banged up, next. Oh, by the way, rookies ranked as well, which is a really interesting article by Matt Barrows that I want to get to as well next. This episode of Locked On 49ers presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here. Preseason games are heating up, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy. I've been playing on Yahoo Fantasy for a long time, over 20 years now. I've been playing. They've been doing it for 28 years, by the way. So whether you're a first timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league, Yahoo Fantasy celebrating 28 years of fantasy football greatness. Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. You don't have to know anybody. You can just jump on yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL and join a public league right now. Get in on a league with whoever's out there that also wants to join the league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. So really quick, here's the list it's an extensive list of guys that are not able to practice right now because of mostly minor injuries. Juwan Jennings still has the calf injury. More on him in a minute. Jacob Cowing still dealing with a hamstring from the first day of camp. Running back Christian McCaffrey got a rest day. Running back Isaac Guerrero has a shoulder that he's been dealing with, and that might take him for a few weeks here. Safety Jair Brown dealing with an ankle. It's an ankle he's had a problem with in the past that he was surgically repaired. And so just kind of flared up on him, Kyle Shanahan said. And so they're being cautious with Jair Brown's ankle. Kyle Juszczyk has an Achilles, which is always, you never like to see Achilles on there. That can be one that can last a while, whether it's tendonitis and hopefully it's not a partial tear or anything like that. Defensive lineman Evan Anderson has a knee bruise. Kevin Givens, a pectoral injury. Sam Okuwanu, groin. Nick Bosa just had a veteran rest day along with Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey. And then Renardo Green still dealing with that hamstring injury. It looks like there was a few more absences as well from practice. But that is the main names that were not at practice for the 49ers on Monday. Thus, the 49ers needing some extra bodies in there to compete and get ready for this Denver practice. So Isaiah Neyor is probably one of the more standout names. I to be honest with you, a lot of these names I'm surprised about that were waived in order to make room for some guys that the names don't excite me as much. I really wanted to see what Isaiah Neyor looked like. When you have that 6'4" frame, 220 pounds, and as George Kittle put it, you can eat up 9 yards in 2 steps. We saw him go up and get a ball earlier in camp. I had my doubts whether he was going to be a Kyle Shanahan style route runner in the NFL, especially based on his body of work in college, Croc. But man, he's a talented guy. And I get you need numbers elsewhere, but I would still choose rookie Isaiah Neyor. See what you have. Coach the guy up. Develop him. Get him ready for these practices and these preseason games. Croc, correct me if I'm wrong, but man, you got to rather have I'd much rather see Isaiah Neyor out there in these preseason games than Andy Isabella. I get Isabella's a veteran, maybe is more up to speed on the scheme. But what's Andy Isabella realistically going to give your football team? Whereas Isaiah Neyor is this rookie that might be able to stick for a little while, at least be someone that could be on the practice squad for you. And I know there's a name that you equate this to that we talked a little bit about off the air, which is one of those teachable moments in 49ers history.
You would think that would be teachable, at least to Kyle Shanahan, and clearly it's not. That name is Tim Patrick. So Tim Patrick, and we brought his name up recently, I think as it pertains to Neyor.
Yeah.
Very similar situations, right? These 6'4", 215 to 220 pound receivers, not quite a Kyle Shanahan style receiver, but he liked something about both of them because he brought them in. And Tim Patrick didn't make it, let him go. He went on to sign with the Denver Broncos. And it's not like he just had this extraordinary NFL career. But this happened in 2017, and Tim Patrick is still playing. So I just take that as you missed something with the evaluation of Tim Patrick. And maybe that something is very just persistent to it has to do with your scheme, right? Like, well, in our scheme, he doesn't fit, so he has to go. But I feel like if you can make Juwan, and I like Juwan Jennings, maybe he blocks better. I don't know, right? But if you can make Juwan Jennings like that bigger type of receiver work, like why can't you give a Tim Patrick or a Neyor a shot? And I don't want to look up and Neyor gets picked up by somebody and we're watching him in the preseason, does well enough. It's late in the process. They release him, bring him back to practice squad. Someone goes down. Next thing you know, you see him playing, and this ends up being a guy like Tim Patrick who plays 8-9 years currently in the NFL. So it's tough. I'm surprised I didn't get a text message from my guy Jasper about the 49ers cutting another big, fast receiver and not giving him an opportunity. But I was definitely surprised by the releasing of Neyor. Well, surprised because guys like George Kittle gave him such high praise. Like George Kittle didn't stop at talking about him covering 9 yards and 2 steps. He also said, hey, yeah, no, this is a guy, he's going to make the practice squad. And that's why you can't do that. That's why you can't jump out there and do that. The kid probably gets excited. He's working his butt off, and he's not even going to make it to a preseason game for the 49ers.
Yeah, and how do you make the practice squad if you can't even show out in a preseason game too? So it really hurts your ability to prove anything to the team that you're trying to make or show the rest of the league what you can do. Croc, conspiracy theory, though, would say the 49ers are trying to stash Isaiah Neyor, knowing he's not ready for the 53, but they don't want him to put anything on tape in the preseason games so they can claim him back off of waivers and sneak him onto the practice squad.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan, but nah, they would like to see him in the preseason games.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, they would like to see him in the joint practice, right? Because now you're competing against another team. Even if we don't want to quite see you in the preseason or care to see you because we really like you, let's see you compete against another team and then kind of make a decision from there. They didn't even give him that opportunity.
Yeah, so clearly there's not something that was really that something was missing with Isaiah Neyor's skill set that the 49ers weren't worried about waiving him and him getting picked up somewhere else. The same could be said about Mason Pline and Tanner Mordecai, which were mildly surprising to me. Mason Pline is someone I was really excited to see again in the preseason games. He's a big dude that can catch the football, and you hoped he would be able to carve out a potential role as a 49ers receiver, as an ex-Hooper. And I always like those ex-Hoopers playing tight end, a college basketball player turned tight end. And so that would have been fun to see, but we might never now get the chance to see Mason Pline really compete for one of those final tight end jobs for the 49ers. And then Tanner Mordecai was just being talked about yesterday by Mick Lombardi on the off day about his arm strength and, what he needs to improve. But apparently the 49ers really like Gus Bradley's kid at quarterback, and they want him to be the number 3 guy. You also have Curtis Rourke, the 7th rounder, is on the PUP list. And so it's a numbers game as well. And you get into this preseason games now when quote unquote training camp kind of comes to a close, you don't need that extra camp arm. And so really a maximum of 3 quarterbacks you really need. And so that's where the 49ers are going. And they chose Bradley over Tanner Mordecai at quarterback. Were those surprising to you at all? And then they clearly just wanted a different cornerback than Trey Avery and like the thought of Fabian Moreau competing instead, I think there.
Do we know anything about Carter Bradley?
No. Kyle Shanahan has mentioned a couple times that they liked his workout from last week and they liked his 28 pass attempts from preseason last year. I don't know even where he was in preseason last year. And so, but apparently they like him. I don't know. I look, there's a lot of I'm not saying it's this because usually this doesn't transfer to the football field as much as it does in coaching and front office stuff. But there is a lot of nepotism in the 49ers organization. I think it's fair to say that that's out there. Having Gus Bradley's kid in, is that the same as bringing one of the Kubiaks in to be an assistant coach or bringing in John Lynch's kid to be, a part of the franchise as well? I don't know if it's going that far. Hopefully he's earned it. I'll say that. I have no scouting report on Gus Bradley's kid. Is it Carter? Carter.
Yeah.
Carter Bradley.
Bradley.
Yeah. I don't have a scouting report on at all? I have no idea. So we'll find out in the preseason games, though, because he's probably going to get some run. They've only got 3 quarterbacks, and I can't imagine Brock Purdy's going to play a lot.
If I had to guess, the 1 and 2 quarterbacks would get the bulk of the when I say 1 and 2, probably like the second string quarterback, he'll get a lot of attempts, right? Like just get these live reps, Mac Jones. And then I think maybe come third game, that's when we'll see more Carter Bradley.
Speaking of Carters, isn't that Kyle Shanahan's oldest son's name, Carter? How long before Carter Shanahan gets a job in the NFL, man? Basically, all you got to do if you're Carter Shanahan is not screw up, go to college, get a degree. Congratulations. Welcome to the NFL, Carter Shanahan.
I think Carter Shanahan is one of those guys. So if you ever go to a 49er practice, they have all these kind of guys working as like scout for the defense, doing walkthroughs and all that. I think he's one of those guys running around. I call him a guy, but he's a kid. But I think he's one of them running around as a member of the scout team with some of the other coaches for the 49ers. So he's already, I think he's kind of active in it right now.
He's one of the kids that's like trying to pick off his dad when he's throwing the balls against linebackers, right?
Yeah.
There's some kids out there doing that. Yeah. I mean, it's a great internship if you can get it, right? There's nothing better when being that age and be able to be around the team and learn how things work in a professional organization. No doubt about that. All right. Let's talk about Matt Barrow's latest start, not his latest. He's writing 10 articles a day, I think, on the 49ers, it seems like, at The Athletic. But yesterday he put out an article re-ranking the 49ers best rookies so far in training camp. I think there's some really interesting rankings and explanations why next. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. If you ever wished that managing your money felt easier, well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, you're planning on a big purchase, maybe you're looking to buy a home, or you just need to save more and get your finances in line. Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth, and including managing your accounts is shared accounts. So managing with a spouse, with a partner, becomes a lot easier and stress-free with Monarch Money, which is so important. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So taking a look at Matt Barrow's article at from The Athletic, the top, he's got them all ranked out. Let's see, 18 rookies. The last one is Curtis Rourke, 7th rounder, just because he's recovering from an ACL injury, hasn't had a chance to compete for anything, and will be in camp, hopefully healthy next year. And who knows, maybe even at the end of the year, he'll be able to get some practices in here after he tore his ACL last football season and then was in the tournament. So he was late to be able to get surgery on that ACL, even though he tore it early in the season, actually played most of the season, taking Indiana, Croc, to the tournament on a torn ACL, man. I'm excited to see Curtis Rourke out there. We're probably going to have to wait.
Well, I bet you are. You identified him as a Kyle Shanahan quarterback, not even during the draft process. Like, it was just during the season. You said, hey, this guy, Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback, I think he's a Kyle Shanahan guy. Like, you got to watch him. I was like, all right, I'll watch him. And you were spot on, because 49ers drafted him, torn ACL and all.
The next Kirk Cousins, Curtis Rourke. There you go. That was my comp for him. I was like, man, this guy reminds me a lot of Kirk Cousins. He's tough. He's accurate. He's actually big and has a good arm too. So yeah, I'm excited for Curtis Rourke. That's going to have to happen next year. Number 1 on the list though, Croc, nickel corner, Upton Stout, 3rd rounder, number 100 overall pick, even higher on his rankings than Michael Williams, the 49ers first round selection, talking about how tough and competitive he is. And Robert Saleh, a great quote here from Robert Saleh, said, don't fall asleep on his size. I mean, the guy plays way bigger than he is and way bigger than he looks. He's got a violence to him. He's got a violence to his demeanor. And one of the things I said about Upton Stout is, well, really, there's only one weakness for him as a draft prospect. And it was that he was just an outlier size-wise. He's really small. And so sometimes, even if you are up to the physical nature of the NFL, you're still not big, and a player can move you out of the way and manhandle you. So that's kind of the thing I'm worried about with him as a run defender, but he's plenty willing to defend the run. He's got quicks. He's got long speed. He's proven he can play corner outside and especially in the nickel. So the transition shouldn't be as hard. And he's proving that the transition hasn't been as hard. So he ranks as the number 1 rookie so far for the 49ers in camp, according to Matt Barrows.
He talks about not sleeping on the size, but the size thing just costs you money. All right, like when you go into the NFL draft and it's like, well, you're 5'8", maybe your arms aren't long. It doesn't mean that the teams aren't going to like you or that they don't think that you're a potentially good prospect. It's just going to change where they draft you at. So once you're in the NFL, you are in the NFL. And whatever you do with that opportunity, that's what the outcome potentially would be. And it sounds like he's been given an opportunity and he's taking full advantage of it. So don't sleep on his size. This guy played bigger than his size in college. Like that's what the film said. He was a very physical guy playing in the slot in that nickel. So he goes to the NFL playing a position where don't sleep on the size. Well, you don't have to be the biggest guy, but you do have to have a lot of heart. You got to have a big heart to play there. And he definitely doesn't lack that.
No doubt. I think like 21 bench press reps too for Upton Stout pre-draft, 225. So he's put the work in, which is really, I think, the thing that shows for a lot of young players is how much work do you put in to it, because there's a lot to learn and you got to be ready to play. And Upton Stout having a phenomenal camp for the 49ers. Number 2 is defensive tackle CJ West. I mean, he's especially once the pads came on, it was like he kind of took over practices, right? And he's been every beat writer's been gushing about how good CJ West has been and going undefeated in some practices in one-on-ones and in team stuff. And the 49ers really need that stout interior defensive lineman. So CJ West, 4th rounder, number 113 overall, looking good so far in that role for the San Francisco 49ers as a rookie. And then number 3 is Mykel Williams, who's also had a pretty good camp. He's had a little bit of an ankle flare up on him here. Kyle Shanahan talked about his ankle injury not being a big problem. It's not a high ankle sprain, which is what he dealt with at Georgia last year. And Mykel Williams has also proven that he's okay with playing through injuries as well. So big end, they can move inside and rush. I think those have been probably the 3 top rookies by a pretty wide margin so far in training camp for the 49ers. And now we'll get to see these guys in preseason games.
Well, the good thing is those guys are all on the defensive side of the ball in the area where the 49ers definitely want to improve. And you have some offensive guys that I think can kind of hold it down as the younger guys are kind of going through some of their lumps. But one thing with CJ West, I remember during the draft getting a phone call from my guy Duzable, who also was with the 49ers for a little bit. I know him from my stint with the New York Jets. He called me and he was like, Croc, what are the 49ers doing? Like, that was what he asked me when they drafted Alfred Collins. He's like, that's not solid. Like, he's like, I'm familiar with solid. Duzable covers the Jets now. It's like, I'm familiar with what Saleh likes and what he wants in his defense. Maybe he's changing, but I don't understand that pick. Then when the 49ers drafted West, he hit me again. Love the CJ West pick. That is a fit for what the 49ers want to do. Like, that guy fits. That guy's going to be good for the 49ers. And so far, when you hear kind of these rankings with Stout and then you go West, what Duzable was seeing is holding true. And not just him, what a lot of people are seeing. Matt Barrows, like, when you're at training camp, you can't help but notice him and what he's doing in the middle there. So that's a guy that was drafted, had a certain skill set. It matched more of what the 49ers have liked in the past, and he's excelling at that, as opposed to Alfred Collins, who, you talked about it with Robert Saleh and say, not quite there yet, right? Like, not quite there. And it's like, well, like, that's not the kind of guy that you typically like.
By the way, also, I think that top 3, that top tier of 49ers rookies so far, I think you can start to pencil in potentially starters there. It'd be a shock if Mykel Williams wasn't starting as an early down run defending defensive end at the very least for the 49ers in week 1. But I think CJ West as maybe that, stout interior nose type 1 tech, 2-eye defensive tackle that can eat up blocks. I think he's ready for that role, and Upton Stout is the nickel corner. I think we might have 3 starters already that you could pencil in for the 49ers out of that rookie class. And I'm not, you have to go to The Athletic and read Matt Barrows' entire article, but the top 5 rounds out with Nick Martin. He hasn't had a lot of pub, but speed and violence is something that multiple coaches have talked about that they do like from Nick Martin so far. And I can't wait to see what he looks like in pads. Jordan Watkins getting a lot of pub as well and getting a lot of opportunities with all the injuries to wide receivers. He was number 5 on Barrow's list. You mentioned a guy that Matt Barrows has all the way down at number 10. And when you're the number 43 pick, I mean, that's only 10 picks deep into the second round. So a fairly early second round pick in defensive tackle Alfred Collins. There's a guy at his own position that's already performing better than him and in training camp as a rookie. And the quote from Robert Saleh there was that Alfred Collins is behind the 8 ball right now, but he's working hard. Love the way he's approaching every day, and he'll catch up. He's a big body with good feet. Those are things you can't teach. It's just a matter of time before he gets the legs underneath him and starts to make more of an impact. That's visible. So that was kind of the Robert Saleh scouting report on Alfred Collins, defensive tackle. And in fact, Collins isn't even number 2 DT on this list of rookies. So the undrafted Washington defensive tackle Sebastian Valdez is actually 1 spot ahead of Alfred Collins. So Collins is the 3rd rookie defensive tackle on these re-rankings by Matt Barrows right now, which says something about how far behind Alfred Collins is. He was dealing with the calf injury. And one of the questions I had about Collins, I was like, well, for sure he's big, but my worry was, is he just big, or does he have other tools and skills to go with it that are going to help him excel in the NFL? And I didn't say that he didn't have those skills, but I wasn't sure, and I wanted to see those skills. And I was worried about his anchor being able to stay low, maintain leverage. And there was times where he'd pop up, and that's been a problem of his so far in camp. And I don't think he's, explosive as a mover to be like a big time pass rusher either. And now he's like, okay, well, that's sort of a similar position that CJ West would play too, as the bigger defensive tackle, less of a 3 tech, less of a pass rusher. Well, if that's the case, where's the role for Alfred Collins if he is indeed getting beat out by CJ West for that type of a role? So that's kind of where we're at. More questions now than answers so far with Alfred Collins through his rookie camp. It's early. We've had 2 weeks of training camp and a week and a half with pads on.
Very early in the process, but the early returns, I will say this, the 49ers are very lucky that as of now, things can always change, right? They're ever change at the NFL level, but as of now, Upton Stout seems to be carving out a role for himself. I think that's going to save the 49ers, because there was a corner that was drafted a few picks after Alfred Collins. Will Johnson from Michigan had some medical kind of, red flags, and he slipped down to the second round, ended up going to Cardinals. He's at practice and looks tremendous. He's like locking up Marvin Harrison Jr. left and right. He's moving well. He's attacking guys, playing through the hands, picking off passes, running routes for guys. He looks every bit the top 15 pick that he was projected to be. So if the Alfred Collins thing doesn't work out, and I get going big in the trenches, kind of reminds me a lot of 2020 when you could have had CeeDee Lamb. Now again, Brandon Ayuk worked out, but you could have went CeeDee Lamb, or you could have went Tristan Wirfs, and you went Javon Kinlaw, trying to force something that you felt was a little bit more of an immediate need at that spot.
Yeah, and kind of just drafting a big guy and hoping you could teach the rest was what Robert Saleh is kind of talking about there. And so we'll see, and hopefully he can learn the rest. And definitely going to be an intriguing prospect throughout the preseason games. It's funny because 49ers have all these injuries and guys that are banged up in camp, and then you see Will Johnson or Josh Simmons, the draft prospects that fall in the draft because of injury. It's like, oh, you can't draft this guy because he's injured. And they're just perfectly healthy at camp right now, doing great. And it's like, what the heck? It's just like there's a lot of overthinking that goes into the draft. But if you're the 49ers, I get it. You can't afford to draft injured players either. And then you end up those players end up healthy somewhere else. And then the guys that you have in-house are all banged up. So it's just the way it goes sometimes, I guess.
And they're playing for teams. They're playing for 2 teams that you do not want to see that player shine on, right? Like the Arizona Cardinals. You don't want the Arizona Cardinals to, in the second round, you got a guy that was top 15, but he had the medical red flags. And now our 49er receivers can't create separation against him. You definitely don't want that. He was a technician at Michigan. And then you don't want Simmons going to the Kansas City Chiefs, a guy who I was on record as saying I would draft him at 11 regardless of the injuries because I think his film was just that good and I just got to take a risk. And obviously he fell for a good reason. It was an injury that definitely scared 49er people because they've had experience dealing with players that have had it. But man, he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs and now they're like, oh, I think we got a new all-pro tackle.
I think Dominic Pooney called Sebastian Valdez, the undrafted defensive tackle out of Washington, called him the Hulk because how he looks like he's not for a 300-pound guy. He's not sloppy at all. He's really put together. 34 bench press reps and the run up to the draft was one of the most in the entire class. 6'3", 301 pounds, a power player at Washington. He went undrafted and he's not a player we've talked about at all. And he ranks ahead of not only Alfred Collins, but 49ers guard 7th rounder Connor Colby on this list because he's apparently beaten him repeatedly in practices and been glowing reports about Sebastian Valdez out of nowhere, maybe even a chance to win the team. They got some spots open at defensive tackle. So there you go. You can go to The Athletic and find Matt Barrow's entire article. Really interesting. He's got write-ups on all the rookies and how they've done and has them kind of ranked out there and some really interesting names and Jacob Robinson and undrafted Corey Kiner as well. And of course, a whole bunch of players that we're excited to see when the 49ers do hit the field in these preseason games. And Croc and I will have it all covered for you right here. So stay tuned and subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast too. Locked On 49ers.